Mic check 1 2. Good evening, everyone. We are about to round out another season here with TRC as we bring the TRC Posh British GT3 series to a close. We won't have very many on the grid tonight as, well, those who are out on track right now are showing a willingness to continue to compete in these older GT3 cars, as well as at least a willingness to just get out there and race. Not a favorite kart choice for many drivers out there, and not much contention for the championships, as I believe Labe has locked down both the overall championship, and if there is a Holy Grail championship with this series, he has locked that down as well. But I can guarantee that Labe will not be a rookie for much longer. And this is probably going to be Labe's last race as a rookie here with TRC. Will be promoted up to at least silver, possibly gold, with the amount of race wins that he has. I believe has eclipsed the race win threshold. As we are about to get rolling with qualifying, do have a longer qualifying session than we usually would. That will bring Labe's lap done there. Horner, hopefully with no more connection issues tonight, looking to compete for the Bentleys once again. As I do believe that he has been in contact with his internet provider in order to iron out any potential issues that he may be having with his service. We have seen the Bentleys win here at Brands Hatch in the season opener, so it is not outside of the realm of possibility. And with double points, I believe, again, drop rounds still need to be calculated. There is possibility for Wagner in the 99 Bentley to contend for the championship with Labe. It is a slim chance, but there is still a chance in order to knock Labe off the top spot. Again, that chance would come from Labe getting a poor race, but even then, I believe being that far down the grid would not really take too many points away from Labe, so still definitely opportunity to improve for Wagner. Can at least do his best tonight to try and close up the gap to Labe, but again, if Labe pulls away and runs away with it, he will just be confirming his championship win even more into the night. Still the gap to Labe about 3/4 of a second for both Horner and Wagner, so not much doing there, at least for the Bentley pace. Track is still green, so these are not reflective of the times that we should see both in the race and in qualifying. Bahena in the number 18 Aston Martin just ahead of Wagner, and Wagner was going to go for a practice pit entry there, but ended up bailing out of that. Kind of duped the cameras there for a second. And the 18 of Bahena having it off and going around at Paddock Hill Bend. As we await, should be Veldkamp and Wagner to close out this practice session before we get started with our qualifying. Qualifying with a smaller grid will essentially be another free practice session. But the clock will round down to 0. And we will await the drivers to return to the line or to the pit lane, whichever they choose, and we will get started with our qualifying session. The Bentley's almost identical on pace here in free practice, and a practice pit stop from Wagner. I believe there is going to be a required pit stop, but it should likely be a splash and dash. And Veldkamp will come across the line, and that will close our free practice session. Who will be first out? The track is green, and it is going to be Wagner first out in qualifying. And abandoning this one is going to return to pit lane, I believe. Has pulled over and is just sitting on the side of the course, is now rolling again. Clattering over the curb, taking out the pylons, goes Horner. Just getting started with this outlap through Sheen. Can very much be a trouble corner on your lap if you are one trying to go for your fastest attack lap possible, or two you are trying to push a bit harder to catch the car ahead, or maybe keep the car behind from overtaking. Now starting the first flying lap of the session. It is a bit wide through the apex of Paddock Hill Bend. Up through Surtees. Down Pilgrim's Drop, hammer down, trying to find all the speed that you can carry down this straight, longest straight of the course. And then you come back up the hill again for Hawthorne. Try and keep the car inside the track limits as you carry all of your momentum to the outside through Westfield, doing the same through Dingledale, the double right-handers before you get to the very sharp right-hander, but you can carry a lot of speed through it of Sheen. And now you come down into Sterling's, one of the only banked corners on track, which has some camber to pull you through. So Wagner does go first. I think Wagner may have gone for the cut through. 1:26.492 for Wagner is the time to beat. And across the line goes Horner. About a quarter of a second slower. Wait and see. The 119 of Labbe crosses the line. It's not good enough for pole just yet. Slotting himself right in between Labbe, or right in between Wagner and Horner, is Labbe, the 289 of Ewer. Our third and final Bentley across the line goes P5. Bahena in the Aston goes P4. We will watch the 616 of Veldkamp up the hill and across the line up to P5. Only one driver still yet to qualify, and that will be the Jaguar of Daharo, the Jag of Mansueto, in P7. Daharo goes up to P6, and we have had our full field qualify. We have 3 Aston Martins, 3 Bentleys, and 2 Jags. Will we see a Jaguar win tonight? It's not completely off the books here at Brands Hatch. They did have a bit of competitive pace. Speaking of competitive pace, the Bentleys are going to need to step on it just a little bit if they want to catch up to the Aston Martin of Labbe. 25.325, currently the time to beat. 10 minutes left in qualifying though, so still plenty of time to improve for everyone on the grid. They will all try to close the gap to Labbe. Veldkamp finds some improvement up to P4. The 185 of Mansueto up to P4 knocks Veldkamp down to P5. Full throttle across the line goes Wagner, and is within a quarter of a second of Labbe, still pushing, trying to find a bit more time. I think may have overcooked it slightly into Paddock Hill Bend. The 43 of Daharo across the line up to P5. What about the 915 of Horner? Needs to find 9/10 of a second at least to eclipse the teammate. Needs to find 1.2 to get on pole. Finds 2/10 there, but not going to be enough. Labbe still on top, as it has pretty much been the entire season. A very dominant showing for the new to TRC Aston Martin driver, but definitely not new to his machinery. Has shown that he is definitely a maestro of the old V12 Aston. Does Wagner find any improvement to take that pole position away from Labbe? He will not stop pushing until the very end, though, I can guarantee you that. Across the line for Wagner. No improvement there. Mansueto into the pit lane. Will there be any improvement for Daharo? It's really a slugfest between Labbe and Wagner, again, as it has been for the majority of the season. Daharo up to P5. The 119 of Labbe finds a little bit more improvement. Now over 3/10, almost 3.5/10. Wagner needing to close the gap. 616 of Veldkamp, I think, got it wrong at Druids and will return to the pit lane. The 43 of DeHaro finds some more improvement now within that 1 second range to Labe, and in the Jag, closing up on to the Bentleys and the leading Aston of Labe. Horner again finds a little bit more time, but needs more, just consistently needs more time. Labe has been known to move the goalpost, especially later on in the session, and even if the rest of the competition has gone to the pit lane, Labe will still be out there trying to put in his best time. The track will be consistently improving. We don't have very many cars to lay down much rubber on track, so we won't see very much track improvement. Ewer in the 289 needs to find about 2 seconds, but only needs half a second to move up into P6 and displace Veldkamp down a position, but a bit wide and loose out of Graham Hill. That's going to make things a bit more difficult. Bahena in the 18. Aston currently P8, but we have seen him well up the order. See if he can find some more time, or maybe just being plagued by track limits here at Brands Hatch. Very easy to overstep just one way here or there. It seems to be quite a bit of overstepping for Labe. A sub 25 from Labe, and is the first and possibly the only driver who will go into the sub 25 range. Wagner pushing a bit too hard on that lap into Hawthorne's will invalidate, and we'll continue on a little bit further to try and find some improvement, but it is not looking to be much competition with the championship leader. Across the line for Wagner. No improvement there. We'll have 2 more laps at least. I think he will get 3. We'll see if he takes 3 though. And the track has just improved. That may be the saving grace that Wagner needed. It has bumped up too fast. We'll see if Labe comes back out of the pit lane to go for another lap, or if maybe Wagner will catch the championship leader out. The 185 of Mansueto. Across the line. Doesn't find any improvement, but will continue on. Has the 915 Bentley of Horner, who will go for 1 more lap. The 99 of Wagner will go for 1 more lap. The 18 of Bahena across the line. No improvement still. We'll have 2 more opportunities. Horner back out. Labe, DeHaro, and Ewer still in the pit lane and quickly approaching the time where they wouldn't have any more opportunity if they came out. They need to leave the pit lane in, well, about 30 seconds or so. Wagner taking to the cut through. And we'll get 2 opportunities at a faster lap here with faster track conditions. Round Druid's trying to get on the power as early as possible. What about the 185 of Mansueto across the line? Finds a couple tenths, but it's not going to be enough to improve in position. Needs about 1/4 of a second more. And Horner, I don't think, found much improvement there either. We'll have one more opportunity to try to improve. The 616 of Veldkamp up across the line will have one more opportunity as well. Did not find any improvement. And we'll get one more shot at qualifying. The 99 of Wagner in P2 will be the next to cross the line. We'll get 2 more laps, this one and one more, to try to improve. And we will see if he can do so. Out of Clark. Up and over the crest to the line. Needs a lot more time. We'll see if he finds any of it. Not on that lap. He'll get one more. And this will be it for the Bentley driver. One more opportunity. The 915 of Horner out as well. The only 2 drivers still out on track to complete a lap. This will be Horner's last. Does not have enough time to cross the line and get another one in. Actually, he may just barely get it. 2 seconds left on the clock. Found some improvement. Does have one more lap. Or actually, he did not find any improvement, but still wants to go out and try to find some improvement. 99 of Wagner down Pilgrim's Drop and through Hawthorns, through Westfield. Then through Dingledale and Sheen. Again, still just trying to carry as much speed as possible. Into the cambered turn of Sterling's. And then up through Clark. Needs to be a lot of improvement here. Will there be any improvement for Wagner? He's tight to the line. And no improvement for Wagner. So unless Horner can find some competitive pace, it will be Labe on a pole. Under the bridge, up the hill, goes the 915. Bentley, again tight to the line and across the line. It was about a 1/10 and a half of improvement for Horner. It is Labe on pole, Wagner P2, Horner P3, DeHaro P4, Mansueto P5, Veldkamp P6, Ewer P7, Bahena P8. And that will be your grid for the season finale here tonight at Brands Hatch. There is one mandatory stop. It's likely going to be a splash and dash, so no real pit stop and likely not taking tires to save as much time in the pit lane as possible. But pit lane here is going to need to be crucial. The pace between Labe and Wagner, not really too dissimilar. We'll see what the race pace is between both Labe, Wagner, and you can also include Horner and Mansueto and DeHaro in there as well. We'll see what the race pace is like compared to the true qualifying pace. It could line up that one bad pit stop, missing the pit box just a bit, or especially a 30-second stop and go penalty for speeding in pit lane, would be very detrimental and could be a swap of position, and that could definitely take Labe out of the contention for the lead if Labe gets a penalty. If anyone gets a penalty, it would pretty much remove them from contention for the win of this race. And thank you for the follow, Zero Aspect, as we have just hit 610 followers. About a minute away from our engines being fired for the final formation lap of this TRC Posh British GT3 season. And thank you to everybody who has tuned in throughout the duration of the season, and thank you to those who will be finishing out this championship here tonight. Horner is fired up, and we are engines fired, just seconds away from getting rolling with this formation lap, and we will be green flag for the final time in the TRC Posh British GT3 series here very momentarily. Kick of the clutch and across the line goes Lab A as we warm the tires, warm the brakes, and smell the rich leather of the British Grand Tours one final time. A parade of British racing green and leather racing gloves and Rolex and Tag Heuer watches. As the meaning of this series was to bring out the older body style, less driven, and for some, Lab A definitely one of the main proponents of that, more enjoyable cars to drive. And between Wagner and Lab A, this race will likely be decided. Wagner is definitely going to be on the hunt, out for blood today, as he will see if he can contend with the dominance that has been Lab A. Lab A likely, very likely, to be driving with the mirrors as we start tonight's race. Definitely going to be eyeing behind for the potential of a late braking overtake heading into Druids. Around Sheen they go. 50 minutes will be our race. One stop is required. There likely will not be tires taken in that one stop, and it's likely just going to be a 1-liter splash and dash. Just put enough fuel in it to count the pit stop and be on your merry way. 8 drivers take to the grid to bring a close to this TRC Posh British GT3 series. Lab A will lead. Wagner in P2, your championship leading duo, P1 and P2 as they stand in the championship. And as they approach the line, we will take the green flag for the final time here in this series. And green, 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 the engines roar as they go down into Paddock Hill Bend Turn 1. Horner will actually get the jump on Wagner. Wagner goes a bit wide to the outside. And Horner is going to be the one out for blood early, and they are packed up 3 wide. Almost half the grid abreast at Druids. Lab A now has the task of trying to run away from the 7 cars behind that are chasing. Battle here for P6 between Bahena and Veldkamp. These were the 3 that we saw go 3 abreast earlier. I believe it was Bahena, Veldkamp, and Daharo. And the gap has already grown between these 3 as they have really pulled themselves apart from the rest of the field as this race got started. Lave still your leader and will lead the first lap of the race. Corner behind is hard charging, so again it's not going to be so absolutely easy for Lave. And one mistake would put either of those 2 Bentleys right back in contention for the lead of this race. They are stacked up behind though, as the 616 of Veldkamp will go through ahead into P6 ahead of Bahena, and the 43 Jag of Daharo wants to follow as well, but a slight bit of oversteer is going to bring a dampener on things there. And is this team orders to TRC admins, Horner and Wagner, and I think there may have been an agreement between Wagner and Horner to let Wagner, knowing that he is the faster driver of the 2 if qualifying is indicative of anything, to try and run down the championship leader of Lave. Incident behind with the 289 of Ewer, who has some damage early. That will bump up Bahena and Daharo both a position. See if the 289 comes into the pit lane. No, he will stay out, so the car seems to be drivable at it as is, regardless of the damage. He will continue on. Lave has now extended, although the gap between sector, or the start-finish line and the sector 1 timing line there, at the start of sector 2, stayed exactly the same, 1.698 seconds. Did not change. And Daharo, V8 versus V12, trying to carry more speed and stay in the slipstream of Bahena and get ahead for this position. A touch wide, and they'll go side by side through Dingledell. Daharo will lock in the position as they come into Sheen, but Bahena carries a bit more speed through. Maybe this battle isn't quite over yet. Still trying to close the gap. Daharo not necessarily extending, but as Bahena does go a bit wide out of Druids, that may give Daharo some of the extension that he is looking for. 1.9 seconds the gap between Lave and Wagner now. Lave with the fastest lap, about 0.2 of a second faster. Lave's last lap was his fastest, same with Wagner. Again, 0.2 the gap between the 2 of them. And we will see The laps should improve in time as the session goes on. You were in the pit lane, has cleared the damage, and is not quite going to lose a lap. At least I don't think he will lose a lap. We will just have to wait and see. Labbe, I believe, does carry more speed, and with blue flags, Ewer may go down on that lap momentarily, but as of right now, we'll hold on to the position. And we'll stay on the lead lap. Big slide from Ewer through Westfield. And Labbe in the old school Aston Martin seems right at home here at Brands Hatch. Most of these cars should, as I'd expect they would spend quite a bit of time here at Brands Hatch in testing. And the majority of these cars on the grid saw a fair bit of success. Although the Jag would have had a much harder time finding that success. There's a reason why we don't have a Jaguar GT3 program today. Now I think being held up just a bit by Ewer there. The gap between Labbe and Wagner closes up just a bit. And I think you were getting blue flags there again as he lets Wagner go past. And you will have the 915 Bentley of Horner closing up as well. But at least right now, all three of the Bentleys could go ahead and make a nice picture into the pit lane early. DeHaro and Veldkamp getting their pit stops out of the way. And although there is not much traffic to contend with, they will be out in clean track, albeit they will have each other for company. The 289 of Ewer will yield to the 915 of Horner at Westfield. And Horner will go up on ahead. And Veldkamp and DeHaro out of the pit lane. Don't see any reason why they would have taken tires, so again, it should just be a splash and dash. The majority of the field will do the same. That is also going to beg the question, has everybody got the fuel correct? As coming into the pit lane, once getting that pit stop out of the way, just need to make sure that you have enough fuel in it. Probably some planning and practice of this strategy in the practice sessions leading up to this season finale. But again, a 50-minute endurance one-stop race. Three of our drivers, one of them did have damage, so needed to come in, but three of our drivers have completed their pit stops no tire change requirement for a 50-minute race, so a 1-liter splash and dash just to clear the stop is in order for most of the drivers. Gap between Labe and Wagner now almost 4 seconds. As fastest lap from Labe, now 3/10 clear, almost 4/10 clear of Wagner. And I think Wagner may have made a mistake, and that gap will continue to grow. At the previous lap, Wagner was almost a second slower than Labe. See if that gap to Labe continues to grow, kind of holding steady, but 4.8 from 4.5. The gap still continues to grow. And another fastest lap for Labe locked in at 25.147 is closing in on those 24-second laps and will be there shortly. I think the 189 drag of Mansueto having a bit of an issue catching up with the 289 Bentley of Ewer. And running a bit wide through Hawthorne's is the 915, or was the 915 of Horner. That will open him up to the 99 Bentley of Wagner a bit further ahead. And into the pit lane will go Mansueto and get his pit stop out of the way. Again, need to be very careful. Cannot afford any penalties, as you will pretty much be relegated to the back of the grid should you get one of those penalties. We will expect to see Labe in at some point, as Mansueto will make it a clean-cut half of the grid, having their pit stops completed. But no, I believe Mansueto has got it wrong. Something wrong with the pit stop. It has not been logged. And I think Mansueto is going to have to come back in, or will be facing a harsh penalty. I believe it is a 130-second penalty, the equivalent of a 30-second stop and go. we will see if Mansueto does come back in. So issues for Mansueto, who has been one of those drivers up there in contention, has been the best of the Jaguar drivers throughout the season. We'll just have to see if that can continue for him. But a bit of bad luck plaguing the Jaguar driver. We'll see if he comes back in. No, he'll stay out. Maybe some communication from the admin saying that they would take care of it and discount the penalty if he came in, but again, that's pure speculation, so we'll just wait and see if Mansueto does come back in. Bahena, the orange and black, not quite adhering to the British Racing Green rules, but no real issue there. Bahena comes in to complete his stop, which would now make it officially nice and halfway for our drivers who have come in and who have not. Again, we'll wait and see what the verdict on Mansueto is. .5 seconds the gap between Labe and Wagner, and it does seem to be that Labe has this championship all buttoned up and ready for him. Has won the majority of races throughout this series and has got pole in the majority of those races as well. Came into the series saying that the Aston Martin, this old Aston Martin, the V12, is the only one that he drives in ACC, and well, I'm sure some in the early part of the season may have discredited him on that point, but will not have now, as he has definitely shown that he is one with the machine. As Bahena will yield. Gap between Wagner and Horner has grown a bit as well, but the gap between Labe and Wagner continues to grow. And it will grow a lot, as I think Wagner trying to push a little bit too hard to find some more time, and it just not quite coming to him. As Labe will now get about another half of a second on Wagner, as we are approaching the halfway point of this race. And Mansueto coming back in, hopefully to get it right this time, which he does. I'm sure we'll hear about the issue in the pit lane post-race, but now has the pit stop sorted, but is now going to be relegated to the back of the grid. At least I would believe would be relegated to the back of the grid. We will see at the next timing line whether or not that is the case. Again, now just waiting on pit stops from our podium drivers. These three still yet to come into the pit lane, and while I'm sure Wagner would like to make some time up in the pit lane, and he may, Wagner and Horner both very tenured. Unless Labbe makes a major mistake, there is no way to close their gaps in the pit lane. And since there is not much true pit strategy involved with tonight's race, there's only so much that can be gained or lost in the pit lane. Labbe just showing dominance in pure pace, as Mansueto is not going to lose many positions there. Drops back down behind Veldkamp, but Veldkamp is not too far away for Mansueto to be able to get back at least one position, possibly two, if he can catch DeHaro, who is a little bit further ahead as well. Mansueto about half a second a lap quicker than Veldkamp, is pretty much right on the marks, at least in terms of fastest lap with DeHaro. So we should see Mansueto catching up to Veldkamp before too long, but I believe that Labbe will be catching Mansueto before Mansueto catches Veldkamp, and will put Mansueto down a lap. Race leaders, again, still need to come in, our top three, as we are just at halfway point now. This is the season finale for the TRC Posh British GT3 series. But if you would like to join in the next TRC series, there is a BMW M2 and a GT4 multi-class season that will be taking place Wednesday nights following this season. Preseason is next week, so sign up with that. Join the Discord and sign up on SimGrid if you would like to get joined up in that series. And now coming into the pit lane is our race leader. It does seem to be a nice clean entry into the pit lane. Wagner will stay out, so on technicality, Wagner will lead a lap of this race, and Horner will move up to P2. But still, the two Bentley drivers need to come into the pit lane. Labbe also needs to make sure that this stop is perfect. So up on the jacks, the Aston Martin will go. And off the jacks and clear is the Aston Martin, your championship leader. And out of the pit lane, no penalties It should be no trouble from here on out for your championship leader. Bit deep into Sterling's goes Wagner. Again, I think trying to find too much time and not enough room on track. Still staying out. And we'll try to outlast the Aston Martin of Labe. And I believe in this time, Horner making a couple mistakes or Wagner making a couple mistakes that is bringing Horner right back into the fold. Again, a bit too deep into Druids. That will bring Horner right back in once again. That gap has closed up a good amount, and as they come to the next sector line, I would not be surprised to see that gap well under 2 seconds. Not quite as much of a difference as I expected, 2.8. Still smaller than it was. The 119 of Labe now behind the 18 of Bahena. I do kind of wonder if maybe Labe made a mistake, as it does seem the gap has grown between the two. I was not watching it though, and again we will wait and see if Horner or Wagner come into the pit lane, which neither of them do. And Bahena, who will be receiving blue flags shortly, will yield to the championship leader, as we have 20 minutes left in this season finale. And quick on the indicators is Bahena moving over at the entrance to Druids to let Labe on by. Wagner and Horner both still not coming into the pit lane, and it does leave me to wonder whether or not Labe will close this gap to those top two in the Bentleys quicker than they would like. He has already taken a second out of the gap to Horner. The gap between Wagner and Horner has only grown by about a half a second in the past couple laps. So Labe is gaining. Don't know that Labe is quite quick enough to lap the entire field. But he will definitely be slotted in ahead of Wagner and Horner when they come into the pit lane. Wagner still staying out, Horner still staying out. That gap now 15.7, was 16.4 on the previous lap, was 17.4 just a couple laps ago. Labbe is absolutely flying. Labbe has not gone into the 124s yet. Still just outside, has not improved upon his 125.147. But his fastest lap, over half a second and over 3/4 of a second respectively to both Wagner and Horner. Still no entry into the pit lane for Wagner and Horner. I think they are going to be waiting it out quite a bit. A bit of a slide through Paddock Hill Bend for Labbe. And I think Labbe will definitely have the championships closed down. Not much can ruin Labbe's race. And the two Bentleys up ahead still need to come into the pit lane. And when they do, Labbe will fly right on by back into the top spot. Still no pit lane entry for Wagner, and still none for Horner as well. The gap between Horner and Labbe now almost under 14 seconds. Now, sorry, not under 14 seconds, under 15 seconds, but is into the 14-second range. There is a battle here between Ewer and Bahena for P7. Bahena going a bit defensive into Druids. Don't know if Ewer is possibly on the front foot here in this battle with an opportunity to get the position back. Or if Bahena was going back on by. They both go a bit wide into Sterling's. They'll be side by side in Sterling's, and Ewer will take the position back. Bahena will have to try and work to get that position back ahead now. And dirty tires for sure. It will be a little bit before Bahena is good to go, and then a bit of a blip there as well. I think Wagner and Horner will be waiting it out to the absolute end before they come into the pit lane. Lave the gap now under 14 seconds as he is gaining quite a bit. Still has not had a lap faster than the 125.147. But any of Labe's laps have been quicker than those of Horner and Wagner ahead. Labe is pushing that Aston Martin. You can see the suspension, the body roll. I think he wants to go a lap in the 124s. And as he continues to push, that gap continues to drop. 13.2 seconds the gap now, and could possibly see it under 13 or under 14 seconds. Sorry, under 13 seconds. He's well under 14. Could see it under 13 seconds at the line. It will stay about the same. Ewer has gone past Bahena, and then that gap grew by quite a lot. I think Bahena just started to make a little issue here and there, and those issues cascaded. Now that gap under 13 seconds, 12.8 at the last timing line. And the 185 of Mansueto closing up to the 616 Aston of Veldkamp for P5. Mansueto, the top of the Jag drivers. I don't think he will have enough time to catch the current top running Jag driver of Daharo, but again, Mansueto did have a double pit stop as there was an issue with his first pit stop, had to get it sorted out at the second, and lost a fair bit of time in doing so, but wants to get back into the top 5. Out of Sterling's into Clark. Mansueto trying to find some room to apply pressure in which he can force the 616 of Veldkamp into a mistake. Either that be missing the apex or late braking into a corner, braking way too late. Mansueto wants to get the nose up the inside. That will open up the opportunity. And we'll see if Veldkamp close enough to defend the position, but I don't quite think so. Mansueto will move up into P5. The gap between Labe and Horner now under 11 seconds. Labe still has not gone faster than the 125.147. But his last lap's much quicker than those ahead by almost a second. think both Wagner and Horner are holding out for something to try and stop the 119. Maybe the 119 making some sort of mistake that would really be the only savior in their fight for the win. Wagner again leading, still stays out. Horner will also still stay out. Bahena coming into the pit lane. I think he may have had damage. But Bahena, I believe, will park it and end his race in the pit lane. The 616 of Veldkamp, I think, got a bit loose coming out of Druids. Now there is nothing between Mansueto and DeHaro. Mansueto has a long way to go to get to DeHaro. Wagner now with a flash of the lights. Veldkamp will yield. Wagner goes ahead. And we have about 7 minutes left in this race. That will give us 5 or 6 more laps. Do believe that would put us at about 5 more laps. Across the line again, the two leading Bentleys. Bit of a slide into Paddock Hill Bend though. That is going to not help Wagner in his pursuit to try and run away from the 119. That gap to the championship leader from Horner now well under 10 seconds, about to be under 9 seconds, as Labbe has continued to push. Just a few minutes away from green pastures, as he has almost caught his 2 contenders and his championship rival. And they still need to come into the pit lane. Not much more time to come in and complete their pit stops. Must do so in order to avoid getting a penalty. We will see if we get the 99 and the 915 into the pit lane on this lap. But no, they will stay out. Fastest lap is by Labbe. It is a 125.147 from Labbe. The track did start out in fast. There was some room for improvement on those laps, but Labbe fastest lap by about half a second over Wagner. Wagner, Horner, and Labbe, the only drivers with laps in the 25s. Most everyone else is in the 26s. It is getting down to the wire for the Bentley drivers up ahead. And we'll see at this timing line where Labbe stands. The gap now under 8 seconds as he seems to be finding more time. Wagner making some slight mistakes. Horner has closed up now 3.7 seconds to Wagner. And still not coming into the pit lane is Wagner. Horner staying out as well. Wilson, are you racing in Go Fast Racing this season, or are you sitting out? I gotcha. I think it is now or never for the two Bentleys at the top. Wagner and Horner with just about 2.5 minutes left in this race when they would cross the line. We'll likely see the pit lane on this lap. And no, Wagner will stay out. What about Horner? Horner stays out. They're going to come in on this next lap, which will be the last lap. Or are their pit boxes in such a space that they can get the stop clear and then cross the line and win the race? That would be very, very clever, but you'd have to have the pit stop in the certain spot, and I don't think their pit boxes are. If they come into the pits with 0 on the clock, which they will not, there is one more lap, but if they come into the pits with 0 on the clock, they will have crossed the line without completing the pit stop in the allotted time, regardless of whether or not they are completing the pit stop on the last lap. They still need to have it complete before they cross the line for the final time. Well under 7 seconds the gap between Horner and Labbe now. And we should see the Bentleys in on this lap. And no, staying out. What kind of gamble is this? Or are they just going to take the penalty and hope that things kind of go their way? So leaders on the final lap of the race, what kind of strategy is being pulled here from the Bentleys? They are not coming in. There wasn't much talk of strategy in the early stages of the race and pre-race talks throughout the day. But I'm unsure of exactly what we're looking at here. Wagner and Horner, the two Bentleys, currently in the lead, have not come in and show no intention of coming in. Will they just cross the line and eat the penalty, or will they go into the pit lane at the end of the race? Don't know what they're doing. Unless they know that Labbe has just taken it, they at least wanted to cross the finish line at the front. Or unless they have some sort of ace up their sleeve. Clock at 0. Wagner comes into the pit lane. But I don't think this is going to work quite the way that he wanted it to. Unless their pit boxes are just before the line, but still, regardless of how it works, Labbe will cross the line and take the win and take the championship. So Labbe will be your TRC Posh British GT3 champion. DeHaro is currently in P4, and Wagner somehow gets away with it. Horner gets the 132nd penalty for not completing the pit stop. I don't know whether or not that will bump DeHaro onto the podium. But Labbe, no contest, will be your champion. So I think the way that would have worked is if we had more cars on the grid and you could come in and have your pit stop served at the very end of the pit box. So technically, because the only thing that declares you in Assetto Corsa Competizione, as DeHaro will cross the line P4. Wonder if the timing line or the timetables will bump him up to P3. And Mansueto will cross the line P5, Veldkamp P6, Ewer P7, Bahena P8. Labe taking the victory lap. And Daharo will be bumped up into P3 after Horner gets applied the penalty. Will bump him down to P5. But Labe, P1, and your TRC Posh British GT3 champion. Labe in the Aston, the V12 Vantage. And that will bring it into the season. But to kind of clear up a bit of the confusion, I think what the hope was, which it did work for Wagner, he was just not fast enough to build up enough of a gap. If he had another 2 seconds or so, he may have been able to pull off the win, but things just did not quite go his way. But if he would have been able to, then he would have been able to come into the pit lane on the final lap clock at 0, complete the pit stop, and then roll across the line, because ACC does not treat the pit lane as a separate entity to the track. It is a continuation of the track, and timing is just based on when you cross the line. So it was a bit of a gamble on strategy that did not quite go in his favor, but it almost did. The gap between the two was not much at the line. And especially with the splash and dash, it would have made things very interesting. But again, thank you all for tuning in. That is going to bring it into tonight's coverage. That will bring it into the TRC Posh British GT3 Championship. Congratulations to Labe. Congratulations to those on the podium. And I believe Wagner will be P2 in the standings there as well. So again, congratulations to everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for following. Thank you for supporting me. And that will bring it into tonight's coverage.